So my name is Katie Lamke. I'm a conservation biologist with the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. I'm based in Lincoln, Nebraska, so just above you guys. But I'm the head coordinator for the Great Plains Bumblebee Atlas. And with us today is our main partner with Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. And I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deidre Kramer. I am the Wildlife Diversity Coordinator for the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. I'm based out of the Pratt office. Kind of have many different hats that I wear in our agency, and one of those is helping coordinate community science efforts in the state. And so, really excited that we were able to partner with Katie and the Xerces Society to continue the Bumblebee Atlas in Kansas for another couple years. So excited everyone's here.
All right, I'm going to get my screen shared here for everybody. Okay, hopefully you all can see that there. So this is the part two, essentially, of our training series. So if you were able to join us back in March, we hosted a first 2 hour webinar that focused on the conservation and ecology of bumblebees. Sorry, my Zoom is looked like it just kicked me out there for a second, but we're still here. Okay. So this is part two of the training. The first part, if you haven't watched it, there is a recording on the website that goes over the life cycle of a bumblebee, sort of their value on the landscape. Um, Sorry, my Zoom is freaking out right now. Is everything, can someone put in the Q&A if it looks okay and sounds okay to them? It's fine. Okay, thank you, Krista. Okay, thanks, Nancy. Okay, thank you all. Link says unavailable on YouTube. Right, I will get the link fixed. You can find it on the Bumblebee Atlas website as well, but it's on the Xerces Society YouTube page. This is a really good webinar. It really sets up the foundation for why we're doing this work, the conservation efforts that are going on to support bumblebees, and sort of the threat factors as to why we need those conservation efforts. So, again, definitely take a look at that video if you haven't watched it. What we're going to go over today is more so how to participate in the Atlas and what it looks like to be a volunteer. So, a little bit more nitty gritty into the weeds of conducting surveys and photographing bumblebees, the fun stuff that you do in the field. But if you have the understanding of bumblebees as a whole, it makes this project a little bit more fun and meaningful. So, if you haven't heard of the Xerces Society before, we're a nonprofit based organization that was founded more than 50 years ago to support invertebrates as well as the habitat that they need to survive. So we were founded by Robert Michael Pyle, who named the organization after the Xerces blue butterfly, which was the first butterfly known to go extinct from human causes that lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. And due to habitat destruction and urban development, the species ceases to exist. And he really wanted to start a group to prevent that from happening to more species. So you can find us online or on social media at xercessociety.org. Excuse me, xerces.org. So, a little bit of an outline today. I'm going to give you a brief project overview for those of you that missed the ecology training, just like what the Atlas is, very high level. Then we'll dive into how to participate, so what it looks like to conduct a survey, the supplies you'll need, how permitting works. Then we'll look at submitting your data. And then the last part, which is usually the most fun part for people, is how to identify the bees in Kansas and how to photograph them in a way that experts can verify them online, because this is a catch and release project. So we get away with that by taking very specific photographs of bees from different angles such that we can identify them from those pictures and the bees can be released unharmed. So starting with the project overview, the Bumblebee Atlas is as Deidre mentioned, a community science effort focused on tracking and conserving bumblebees. And this really is a form of collaborative conservation, right? We are active in 21 states now, and we have many, many state, federal, nonprofit, university partners that are all working together to make this program a success. And the public is also invited to participate in this, right? This is really what's driving the success of this program is that so many people from all walks of life can pick up a net and go out and take an active role in conservation. And we started in the Pacific Northwest in 2018. And then we jumped over to Nebraska, which is where I came in 2019. And each year since then, we've grown to a new state or a new region. So all the states that are shaded on this map are receiving the same training. People are going out and conducting the same surveys. So all the data that's coming in is forming one really large baseline data set for bumblebees in the United States. And here's just the Xerces Bumblebee Atlas team. There are many of us that are working behind the scenes to coordinate these efforts with all of our partners and volunteers. So I'm your main contact for the Great Plains Bumblebee Atlas, which covers North Dakota, South Dakota, and Kansas. But I also work with Jenny Pugesek, who's based in Minnesota, to coordinate the Midwest Bumblebee Atlas, which is Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska. So if I'm ever out of the office and you send an email or call us, it's likely going to be Jenny or myself that will be reaching out to you. But just know that this whole team here is always willing to answer any questions and help if something arises. And we focus on bumblebees for a few different reasons, right? One is that we have enough data to actually know that they are imperiled. That's not true for a lot of other insect species, right? We can think of monarchs. And besides monarchs, bumblebees are really the next best studied native insect here. And we have such a large data set that we're able to show that they have been declining over the years. And this makes them a good target for us to study, right? We know that there's a reason. It's likely that there's more funding available for them because we have this data to back it up to do projects like these. They're also really excellent pollinators. Bumblebees have such large body sizes that they're able to conduct what's called buzz pollination for certain plants. And again, this is really covered nicely in the ecology webinar, but they're able to pollinate different plants that other bees just simply can't do because of their physiology. Bumblebees can also fill a pretty unique niche, again, because of their relatively large size. They are able to be active earlier and later in the day when there's cooler temperatures out, where some of our smaller native bees can't forage yet because it's not warm enough. And then they're also just a very charismatic group, right? A lot of people can recognize a bumblebee. They're pretty large. They're pretty abundant on the landscape. You can find them pretty much throughout the growing season. And so all of these things combined make them a really good candidate for a community science project, right? People can go out into the field, do some surveys, recognize bumblebees. We can identify them from photographs, so we don't have to kill them. The data that we're learning about for bumblebees, because they're such generalist species, meaning they'll forage on a lot of different plants, they're found in a lot of different habitat types. They're a good umbrella species, right? So they will protect, or excuse me, the habitat that we conserve for bumblebees will protect a lot of different species. So really good candidate for a community science project. And the community science effort, right, by bringing in you guys and helping train you guys, we are able to gather so much more data at a much faster rate than just, Deidre and I could do. If we were to go out and survey Kansas for bumblebees, it would take us so much longer, and we would not find as many species or as many individual bumblebees or get as much habitat data than we would by bringing you guys into this project to really help us learn about the bumblebees. So our goal here is to go out after these trainings and conduct our surveys. And what the data is going to allow us to do is look at how populations are changing in Kansas and see how distributions of various species are changing, right? With climate change, are we seeing species shift north or to the east or to the west? And really keep tabs on what these species are doing so that if or when they need help, we have the data ready to go. It's also allowing us to fill some critical data gaps regarding habitat associations, right? In a lot of the Great Plains states, these atlas programs are essential because we don't quite know what habitats they're using and what plants they're using throughout the state or from spring to fall. So these practices really, really help us learn about what bumblebees need in the state and how we can do the most efficient, practical job to conserve them. And the way that this project works is after everybody conducts their surveys, you go online and submit your data to bumblebeewatch.org. So on this map here, looks a little blurry to me. Excuse me if it looks blurry to you. This is a screenshot of bumblebeewatch.org. If you've heard of eBird or iNaturalist, this is a very similar website to that, and that it's collecting photo-based bumblebee observations in the United States and Canada. And then all of the data, as I mentioned earlier, right, we're collecting surveys in Kansas, but they really feed into larger regional and even national data sets. So by participating in this project, you're really contributing to conservation efforts that are beyond the scope of just Kansas. So it's a really powerful project to get involved with. And the data is contributing to various research publications. We've created habitat management guidance for some of our older projects. So to inform land stewards, like, hey, if you're going to be grazing or burning or mowing or spraying chemical, these are some of the factors to think about if you want to reduce the harm to pollinators. We've also written a huge 200-page document for the state of Washington, and they're the first state to have a statewide bumblebee conservation strategy. So it's a really in-depth document about all the species that are there, what are sort of the priority habitats that the state should be conserving, how to go about doing that. So this data is really feeding into some powerful conservation tools. And as we go into 2026, some of our older Atlas projects shown in the dark green there are actually old enough that we're transitioning into what we're calling phase 2 of long-term monitoring. So in Kansas, we're going to be talking about phase 1, which is broad census, and it's where most of our states are. So the way that phase 1 works is it's essentially inventory, right? We've split each state into these 50 by 50 kilometer grid cells, and ask people to adopt one of these grid cells. And the grid cell that you adopt is essentially an area that you're saying, I'm going to go survey for bumblebees in this part of the state. And our goal here is to just gather that baseline information, right? What bumblebees did you find? What time of the year did you find them? What plants were they on? What habitats were you in? And then apply that information to on the ground conservation. So just like we've done with the Pacific Northwest and Nebraska, our goal at the end of this project is to make habitat management guidance for bumblebees of Kansas. And just to give you a sort of timeline for the Great Plains Bumblebee Atlas, we initially launched in 2022 with a grant that was partnered with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that ran until 2024. And then in 2025, we were still looking around for funding to continue this project. And so it was more of a hands-off here, right? We weren't running any trainings. I wasn't connecting with volunteers, but people that had been trained could still go out and participate. And then this year, we're excited that we're now partnered with Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks to really continue this effort in the state of Kansas and keep it going. But in those past 4 summers, we're at about 9,000 bumblebee observations and over 1,000 surveys. So really exciting to see that amount of data come in just 4 summers. And we're excited to get a few more summers under our belt as well. And in that time, participants have found 6 species so far. So we've got the American bumblebee, which was the most frequently observed, brown-belted bumblebee, the Southern Plains bumblebee, which is a species of conservation concern. We've got the black and gold bumblebee, the common eastern bumblebee, and the two-spotted. So if you're into bird identification or plant identification, this should be a walk in the park for you because there are really only 6 bumblebees that are found with any sort of frequency in the state. And here's just a map of the surveys that participants have conducted in the past 4 summers. And you can see that there's a pretty good distribution, right? There's obviously more surveys around city centers, which tends to happen with community science projects. But one of the goals here that we're trying to do with these grid maps is to get people outside of the city, right? We want to know what's going on in some of the more rural or remote areas of Kansas to make sure that we're understanding the whole picture of bumblebees in the state. So each summer, we're going to put out a priority map where we're going to highlight different grid cells that we want people to travel to, right? You don't have to travel to, but it's ideal and helps make a bigger impact if we can get to some of these grid cells that haven't been surveyed yet. So I'll talk about that later. But next, we're going to go into how to participate. Let me just take a quick look at the Q&A here. Okay. Thank you all for telling me that the sound and screen looked good. I appreciate it. All right, so here's a brief overview of how to get involved with the Atlas. So part 1, we're doing it right now, attending a training event. Again, you can go back and watch part 1 if you missed it. The next step is create a Bumblebee Watch account, then adopt a grid cell, plan and conduct your surveys, and submit your data. So we're going to go through each of these pieces individually. And if you miss something or you want a link to something, everything that we talk about today is on our website, bumblebeeatlas.org. We've got all of these steps laid out, all the appropriate links you might need. So everything is online for you. And then following this online training, we also are going to hold at least 2 in-person training events this year. On Saturday, June 6th and Sunday, June 7th. And these are going to be more like hands-on days where you can learn about the protocol, learn how to swing a net, how to catch and handle a bumblebee, how to fill out your data sheets, connect with other volunteers in the area, really just give you some more confidence in the field with these skills because not everybody has them naturally. Most people have not swung a net since they were a child. So these are fun days. If you can get to one of them, I highly recommend it. Okay, so the first step here after you do your training is to go and create a Bumblebee Watch account if you don't have one already. So you go to bumblebeewatch.org and you're just going to create a username and a password, and then you're going to use that username to adopt your grid cell. So make sure you remember what you put in. And then this is going to create a profile for you where as you submit your photo observations, it's going to record all the different species that you've detected. It's going to have an area for your most recent sightings. It's going to have an area where you can click on and view your survey data. You can, excuse me, you can also go in here and look at maps. So you can zoom into Kansas and see where people have found bumblebees. You can filter by month, by county, by species, by observer. So you can really go in and explore the data for yourself. You can also go in and look at all the pictures that people have been taking. And sometimes that's pretty helpful when you're trying to learn what a particular species looks like near you. Like if you want to learn about, oh, I want to see the Southern Plains bumblebee. You can go in, type in Kansas Southern Plains bumblebee, and all these pictures will populate of what that species looks like in your area. So pretty cool feature. You can go in and check it out. And then after you have your account, you're then going to go to bumblebeeatlas.org. So these two websites sound very similar but are very different, right? So Bumblebee Watch is the data submission platform where you have your profile. BumblebeeAtlas.org is the project website, so where all these recordings will be, event signups, any resources for the project are going to be on Bumblebee Atlas. And to do that part, you're going to go to Get Involved. And then when you go to Get Involved, it's going to bring you to a grid adoption map. And so here are the grid priorities for 2026. All of the green grid cells are surveys, or excuse me, are cells that have not been surveyed or have been surveyed less than 2 times. So these are the areas where we want to know more about bumblebees in the state. So if you can adopt one of these green grid cells, I highly encourage it. If you cannot, that is totally okay. Any data coming in from the state is great. So to adopt your grid cell, we're going to go to bumblebeeatlas.org. Let me share my screen here. Okay. You guys are seeing that. So this is the website here. We're going to go to Get Involved and click Adopt a Grid Cell. And it's going to bring you to the adoption form. It's got this splash screen here. If we select Kansas, it'll zoom us into Kansas. And those priority cells are all going to pop up. So you can zoom in and out of this, see which cell you want to select. You can select the cell where you live. You can select a cell where you have a friend or a family member, maybe has some property. You can do that. Maybe it's somewhere where you go camping during the summer. You can select that one. You can select more than one. You can adopt a cell as a group of people or an organization, or just as an individual. So then you're going to go through on this event form here, adopt a grid cell, type in your name, zip code, your Bumblebee Watch username, your email. And then this question here is going to auto-populate after you select a cell. So if I click Kansas 25, it'll fill this in for me. There's a few more questions for you to answer. Click submit, and then you will receive an email with sort of your confirmation, like this is your grid cell you adopted. And all the links to everything that we're going over today. Get this back in full screen. Okay. And then we're going to talk about permitting. So Deidre, I'll pass it over to you. And if you all can't hear Deidre, please type something in and we will get it fixed.
So when you are working on any type of research project in the state of Kansas, you are legally required to get a scientific collection permit from the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. That kind of sounds scary when I say legally required. It's just a state statute, and so we just wanted to make sure that you all are covered and have your permit. So these permits are required to handle any wildlife in the state of Kansas, including bumblebees. And so there's sometimes confusion about when you need to apply, and it's all the time, no matter if you are doing these surveys on public land or private property, they are required. And it's really a pretty simple process, and to make it even easier for everyone who wants to participate, we have created a template that you can just copy and paste, and has instructions of how to answer the questions on that permit. Once you hit submit, you have to pay, I think it's like $12 and some change as just kind of the price of the permit, and then a service fee. That will then come to our office, we'll review it, and then we can issue you that permit. Next slide, Katie. So I mentioned that template. You can find the template on the Bumblebee Atlas website if you go to the Resources tab and Permits. Under the Great Plains Bumblebee Atlas section, you can find Kansas, and the template will be there. Additionally, when you adopt a grid cell, Katie has set it up so that you get an automated email that will have that template in it and instructions um, that you can follow. If you adopt more than one grid cell, you'll get that email each time. You only have to apply for a collection permit once. That will cover you for the entire year of these surveys. So you'll get multiple automated emails, but just apply once and you'll get your one permit. Next slide, Katie. Um, so just to kind of cover a few questions, common questions that we get about who needs to apply. At least one adult over the age of 18 needs to apply for the permit. We no longer have sub-permittees, so if you are out surveying on your own, you need to have your own permit. If you go out in a group, say 3 or 4 people, only one person needs to be permitted. Everyone else that is in the direct presence of that permitted individual would be covered by that permit. I know that's kind of confusing, but if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us here in the Pratt office, and we're more than happy to help you with any questions that you have. Over here, you can see on the side of the or whatever that image, you can kind of see what the permit will look like. You'll get it's essentially one page and it will have your information, your permit number, what your authorized activities are, which would be research, and then a few more descriptions of what species you would be targeting, which would be the 6 bumblebee species in the state. And you need to keep this paper or digital copy of your permit with you during each survey. This is just to ensure that if you do get stopped by a game warden and they just ask you a few questions or anything, you have the necessary documentation to show that you have coordinated with us and you are authorized to do those activities. And then you should be fine as long as you have the permissions to be on that property. There shouldn't be any issues. And then for each scientific collection permit, we do require year-end reporting. And we've worked it out with Katie she will be providing that end of year report to us. So any data or any observations that you submit to the Bumblebee Watch website that has been verified by Katie and the Xerces team, those observations will be submitted to us in one bulk package. So you don't need to submit an individual report at the end of the year. And again, if you have any questions about this permitting process, I know it kind of sounds scary, but it's fairly simple, and we are more than happy to help anybody who has questions about any of this process. So I think that's all I have for the permit, but yeah, we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, so we've got the first 3 steps done. The next part is how to plan and conduct a survey. So when we're planning our surveys, you're going to need to think about when to survey, where to survey, and then make sure you have all your supplies with you. So when you survey is really up to you, as long as it's within our survey window, which runs from June 1st to September 30th. And our minimum ask is that you try to conduct 2 surveys within your grid cell during that window. You can certainly conduct more than that, and we love it when people do, but 2 is sort of the minimum. And for the day, you want to select a day where the temperature is going to be between 60 and 90 degrees. The winds are less than 20 miles an hour, and it's not raining. And bumblebees are going to be active outside of these parameters, but at a reduced rate. So it sort of just introduces more bias if we're not surveying within their ideal foraging range. And the colors that you see here on the survey window graphic Anywhere that's green are where bumblebees are active. And so we're avoiding the first 2 months because that's when a lot of queens are emerging in Kansas, right? That's a very sensitive time for them. So we don't want to be capturing and handling the queen bumblebees because they're busy trying to set up their nest and build their colony up. So we're avoiding those first few months where they're out and working. And again, a lot of information on that part in the ecology webinar. Where to survey, again, is up to you as long as you have the appropriate permissions and permits. So you can survey on public natural areas, public urban areas, state parks, wildlife management areas, public rights of ways, right? So along roadsides. And there are a lot of beautiful county roads in some of the Great Plains states. But again, just make sure you have the appropriate permissions because sometimes on public land, you still need a survey to go out and conduct bumblebee survey. You still need a permit, sorry, to conduct surveys. So on land such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, when you think about wildlife refuges or National Park Service, you need an additional permit. Those ones are a little bit harder to get. They're not impossible. But just make sure before you go out and survey, you know if you need a permit or not. Private land, you are more than welcome to survey on private land, again, as long as you obtain permission from the landowner. And then just a couple of precautions to keep in mind while you're participating in this project. Obviously, respect private property and ensure that you are within the bounds of where you need to be. If you're ever unsure of if you've crossed into private property, err on the safe side and just stay where you know is public or leave and go to a different area if you really can't tell. As a Xerces Society volunteer, right, when you sign up to participate in this project, we really do not want you trespassing onto private land. So please be careful of where you're going. There's a lot of private land in Kansas. Thankfully, there are some nice apps available today to let you know where the boundaries are. When it comes to supplies, there's a list of things that is going to help you. The first one is an insect net, and I have a few slides after this to sort of dive into a couple of these. But your insect net, you're going to need printed copies of your data sheets, something to write with. You're going to need some vials to collect your bumblebees in. You're going to need a cooler with some crushed ice. You're going to need a camera. A clipboard is useful, obviously, if you're out in the field and there's no writing surface. Field guides are also useful, not necessary, but we do ask you to write down the plants that are blooming in the area. So if you're not familiar with the floral resources in Kansas, sometimes field guides can help with that, or there's different apps like iNaturalist that you can use to help get you in the right area. Something to record the weather and your location with. A lot of people just use their smartphone for this. A timer, again, a lot of people use their smartphone. Some people have a stopwatch, others use their watch. And then your printed copy of your KDWP permit. So for insect nets, we're looking at aerial insect nets that have a mesh bag. A lot of insect nets you might find on the internet will have a canvas bag, which are more durable, but you can't see through. And for this project, you're going to need to be able to see where the bumblebee is. So make sure you get a mesh bag, something that has a deep bag too. A lot of the mesh insect nets, like especially for kids, you'll see they're very shallow nets. So you want something that has a deep net like you see in the pictures here. And you can get these from places like Home Science Tools, forestry suppliers. You can search the internet. And if you go to our website, again, under resources, we have links to all of these places where you can go and find a net. If you come to one of our in-person trainings, I'll also have nets for you to go home with if you need. For vials, most people use 30 to 50 milliliter vials or drams that are made out of like a polypropylene mix, which is just a more durable plastic. And You can also use old jars or prescription vials that you have at home. Just make sure that you really wash them out so they're clean. Again, we have links to where you can find these on our website, and you want to try and bring about 20 with you into the field. If you're doing more than one survey that day, double that, right? Because we want to use clean vials at each of our sites to avoid transferring any sort of pathogen, parasite, disease to bees that are at different locations. For the camera, you can use a digital camera of any kind if it has a macro setting, which is usually a little flower icon. That works really good. Some people have fancier cameras with macro lenses that work great. A lot of people use their smartphone for this. And nowadays, you can even purchase these clip on lenses that are macro lenses, and they're pretty inexpensive. That really increase the quality of the photographs you could take. So check those out. If you do get a clip on lens, make sure it's one that's fit for your phone model. For a cooler, any cooler that you have will work. I particularly love backpack coolers now. I got one at a sporting goods store that was made for baseball, right? It's meant to hang in the dugout. It's got all these clips and pockets on it so I can put all my survey gear in it. And it's been very helpful because most of the places that I'm surveying, there's a little bit of a hike included to get out there. So I find that that's the best for me. Others will use a smaller, like 7 to 9 quart lunchbox size cooler. Some people aren't walking very far from their car, so they'll just put a regular, larger size cooler in the trunk and keep their trunk open while they're doing the survey. The ice, try and use crushed or cubed ice. For these surveys, it chills the bees the fastest and the safest. Please do not use any gel packs or ice packs. A lot of these newer ice packs are made to go below freezing. I don't understand the technology there, but we do know that when bees get below those freezing temperatures, it can be fatal for them. So please do not use those advanced ice packs and try to just stick with the crushed or the cubed ice. Okay, survey components. So when you go out and do your survey, there are two pieces. There's the bumblebee survey, and then you're going to also conduct a brief habitat assessment. And there are two types of surveys that you can do. We have point surveys, which are the main survey type that most people conduct throughout the US. And then we have roadside surveys that are super helpful in, honestly, the Great Plains Midwest, where there's more private land, right? In areas where we really have to search for a spot to do a point survey, sometimes it's easier to do a roadside survey. You know, you're driving through maybe a big agricultural area, or you're in Western Kansas where there's not really any private public land. You can sort of get away by doing a roadside survey in those areas. So I'll go over both of those. So the first one here, the point survey, again, this is the preferred type. This is probably the survey type that most of you are going to conduct. And you're going to select any area that you have permission to survey at within your grid cell. The size should be 1 hectare, which is about 2.5 acres, or the size of 2 football fields. And the duration of this survey is 45 person minutes. So if there's one of you surveying, you're going to search for bumblebees for 45 minutes. If there's 2 of you, you're going to divide that time in half, and you're each going to search for bumblebees for 22.5 minutes at the same time in that area, and so on. So with 3 people, you're doing a 15-minute survey each. So the more people you bring into the field, the quicker these go. And the survey minutes only counts for active search time. So anytime you catch a bee and you have to take your trophy bee picture, or you're transferring your bee to a vial, or you're placing your bee in the cooler, getting water, anything where you're not looking for bees, you're going to pause your timer. And the way that this process is going to work is sort of catch, chill, photograph, release, right? So you're going to walk slowly through your survey area. You're going to capture all of the bumblebees that you observe. After you capture a bumblebee, you want to make sure to note the flower that you caught that bee on. You're going to transfer your bee to a vial. Your timer is going to be paused while you're doing this. Place that vial on ice, restart your timer, and repeat this process until you've hit 45 minutes. After you've hit 45 minutes, you're going to turn to the data sheet and start photo documenting each of the bees that you have. And later on in the presentation, I'll talk about how to actually photograph the bee and what angles you want to try and achieve. And then once you've photographed your bees, they're going to wake up and fly away. You want to make sure you release all your bees in your same survey site. Then you're going to conduct your habitat assessment. So I have a couple of short videos that we're going to watch for those of you that won't be able to attend training. This is just sort of a 1-minute how to catch a bumblebee that sort of puts it in perspective for you. So please let me know as I start playing this if it doesn't sound good to you or it's breaking up, and I can send a link to these afterwards.
When you're out collecting your bumblebees, you want to make sure you're doing it carefully, but you also want to make sure you're doing it with a technique where you're actually going to be successful in capturing the bumblebee. Now, the best way to do it is to come from the side. You'll actually sweep over the tops of the flowers, but the most important part is to make sure you follow through and have the net droop over the side of the rim, and you can actually flip it over a third time so the bee can't escape. And another way, you can come from below the bee if the flower is kind of drooping, and you can come up. But again, you have to have that follow through where you flip the net over the top. Another way, if you're feeling a little more timid about sweeping really hard, is bees tend to fly up when they try to escape. So you can actually put the net over the top of the flowers that it's on, and the bee will usually fly up to the top of the net, or once it gets about halfway, you can just tip the net over, and then it'll be captured in the bottom of your net.
Okay, and I should have mentioned these are videos that were made when the Atlas was first launched, so there are many more partners besides Idaho Fish and Game at this point. And so here we're just going to watch this next one too of how to transfer a bumblebee into a vial.
So once you've collected your bee, you're going to gather the net up so that the bee is restricted to one part of the net. And then you're going to take your vial with the lid off, slide it up the net to that area where you've kind of narrowed or bottlenecked the net. You'll slide the bee into the vial and keep that net nice and tight over the top of the vial. Once he's in there, you can take your lid, you can slide it up the net to get to where the top of the vial is, and then you can sometimes keep the net inside the opening and then slide the net out once your lid's on top, or you can just, if he's cooperating or she's cooperating, you can just slide the lid right over the top, and then you've got your bumblebee. Once you've collected it, you can put it in your cooler or put it on ice, or so you can prepare to process that bee once you're done with your survey.
Okay. And obviously that takes some practice. And we can talk about bee stings too, but the way that we've designed these protocols, bee stings are pretty unlikely and infrequent. So yeah, more on bee stings to come later. I promise they don't happen often, but that is definitely something that pops into people's minds of when we say, "You want me to net bumblebees and place them in vials?" But if you do it properly, it is a safe way to do this. Okay, so a few questions about chilling bees. When you place a bee into a vial on ice, it'll usually take about 10 to 15 minutes for them to completely chill. And we're chilling the bees so that they're essentially immobilized. And this allows us to take really high quality photographs because the bees aren't moving around. So we can sort of manipulate them and get the angles that we need in the images to identify them. So chilling takes 10 to 15 minutes, but it can vary, right? Larger bees might take longer to chill. Smaller bees might chill faster. If it's a really hot day, sometimes it takes longer to chill the bees. So just keep an eye on them. They will be okay on ice for the duration of your survey. Try to release them before they hit a 2-hour mark, which usually won't happen. But sometimes if you get to a place and there's a lot of bees and you have a lot of bees to process, that 2-hour mark can be hit. If a bee wakes up while you're trying to photograph it, this is usually a slow, gradual process, right? You'll start to see the wings move, its feet might twitch a little bit. But if it's moving too much to the point where you can't get good photographs of it, just place it back in the vial and put it back on ice and move on to the next bee and come back to that one once it's fully chill. A few points on photo documenting. Make sure before you photograph your first chilled bee that you've checked the lighting and the focal length with another small object like the tip of a pencil or maybe a small flower head. Something to make sure that your camera is taking pictures that are appropriately lit and the object is in focus. Photograph in multiple angles, right? So you can submit up to 6 photos per bee on Bumblebee Watch, and it's best if you take many different angles of the bee so that when we're assessing it and trying to assign it a species identification, we can look at it from different angles. And I'll talk about the angles that we need when we're doing the identification process because it'll make more sense later on. And if a bee is still immobile after you've photographed it and you're worried it's not going to wake up, just place it in a safe spot in the shade and allow it some time to return to ambient temperature, and it should wake up and fly off. And then this is a really, really important factor for the Atlas program. So as you're surveying, you're going to need to come up with a system to remember which bee you caught on which plant, right? So just looking in this cooler here, there's a lot of different bees. A lot of them are going to look the same, especially if you're new to Bumblebee ID. They might all look the same to you. So you need a process for remembering which bee was caught on which plant as you go to photo document your bees. Same thing with when you go to submit your data. You need a way to organize which photos relate to which bee. Because when you go online and you don't know which bee was what, and you have a bunch of photos that look the same, it's really hard to submit your data accurately. So we want to make sure that you have this process in place. And sometimes people will go out and do like a dummy survey just to make sure they know what they're doing or to figure out a process. There's a few different ways you can do this. I've seen a lot of creativity come through in pictures. And one of the ways that I see a lot is by people writing on their vial caps, and then they sort of wash that writing off with alcohol when they're done. And maybe the first photo in their bee, so if you're going to take 6 photos, that first photo will always have the cap with the vial on it. And that number is going to relate to the line on your data sheet for this bee, which is going to have the plant host. I've seen other people that have laminated one of their data sheets, so it's more of like a whiteboard so they can write on it and erase it with each bee. Other people will photograph the floral host in with their bee so they remember which bee was on which flower. Other people might take the first picture of their bee on a cap. So I like to use the actual photo number in my digital camera, but those can get pretty long. So other people are using visual cues so that when they open up their huge file that has maybe 70 photos in it, everywhere that starts with a cap is the beginning of a new bee. So it's sort of a visual cue in your camera. So many ways to do it. However you want to do it is good. Just make sure that you have a system for it. So after you've documented your bees, you're going to move on to your habitat assessment. And I have the data sheet up on the next slide to sort of show what some of these questions are. This is not meant to be an exhaustive habitat assessment. It's more so to capture a snapshot of what your survey area looks like on that day. Depending on your skill level with plant ID and the complexity of your survey site, it could take anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes. And we're just asking you to sort of describe the habitat type that you're in, the habitat type that surrounds you. So what can you visually see around you? If you're maybe in a pasture, but you see there's a crop field adjacent, or maybe there's a riparian area adjacent to you. You want to know that kind of information. We're going to ask you to document the number of plant species that are in bloom on your survey day, sort of estimate how much of the area is blooming, and then what type of management is occurring. And this is all to the best of your ability. If you don't know something, that is more than okay. So here's the front and the back of the data sheet. You can see the top there just has some basic site information. So the site name is for your purposes. If you're going out to your friend Linda's property to go do a survey, you might call that Linda's house. You can record your latitude and longitude, the date, how many of you surveyed. Then we go down to the type of survey you did, the start time, some basic weather information, again, the habitat type. So we're going to ask you for the primary habitat type of your survey area, and then the surrounding habitat types. And this is to the best of your ability. How much of the area is flowering. Then we have some nesting habitat features. So there's a checkbox that is going to ask, did you see bunch grasses? Did you see rodent holes? Did you see brush piles? These are all things that we associate with bumblebee nesting. And so we want to know if they're in the area. And then we move on to management practices that you either see or there's evidence of, or you suspect that they might be happening. There's also a place for notes. And then we move to how many species were in bloom. You write down the number of plant species, and then we ask you to document the top 15 and try to be as specific as possible when you're writing down the plant names. This just helps us have a higher quality data set, right? If somebody submits clover, I don't know if that was the non-native field clover or if that was a native prairie clover. So just having a better idea of which plant you actually saw will help us in the long run. And then you can see on the back side there is where you record all of your bumblebee observations. So each row there is going to correlate with one bumblebee in your cooler. There is a column for sex. You do not have to sex your bumblebee, but some people like to give it a go. Feel free to leave that one blank. For bumblebee species, if you don't know which species it is, that's also okay. You can write bee number 1, bee number 2, bee number 3. You can take a guess at which species you caught. Then you'll write your host plant, and then photo numbers is where you're going to record your process, right? Whether you're writing down the numbers in your camera or the number of the vial cap that you have. And at the very end is your volunteer data. So we want to log how much time and mileage people are contributing to bumblebee conservation in Kansas. So you can include time spent planning, right? Trying to find a survey site, driving to and from your survey site, how much time you spent organizing your photographs and submitting your data. All of that can be shared. And then we have an overflow data sheet. So if you're lucky, you might roll up to a survey location where you are going to catch more than 15 bumblebees. This is where you just keep documenting your bumblebees on this overflow sheet. And then on the back side is a scale grid. So we like for people to take at least one photograph of a bumblebee either on this grid or next to a ruler. It's not required, but it is helpful when we can sort of have a sense of scale included. So that's the main survey type. And then for roadside surveys, which I personally love roadside surveys. When I'm driving to a survey location, I will often pick a nice county road and do a roadside survey on my way to my point survey. And so to do these, you're going to select a stretch of road that's 10 miles long within your grid cell. And excuse me, you're just going to survey the public rights of ways on that side of the road. These surveys are only going to be 15 person minutes long. So they're much shorter than the point surveys, but you're going to do 5 of them. So you're essentially conducting 5 mini surveys that are at least a half a mile apart within that 10-mile stretch of road that you've chosen. So this allows us to sort of weave through lots of different habitat types. Again, this is a good way when we're in an area that has a lot of private land that we can still gather some data. Because these are shorter surveys, though, you might have to conduct your habitat assessment and then photograph your bees, right? Because they might not have chilled completely by the time your 15 minutes is up. Before you move on to your next roadside stop, make sure to release all your bees at the site that they were caught at. We don't want you driving the whole 10-mile stretch and collecting bees along the way. The foraging distance of a bumblebee from their nest is about 2 to 3 miles. So we really want to release them at the same site that we caught them, just so that they can make it back home. And then again, this is a really big one. If you are going to be surveying on roadsides, to respect the property boundaries and posted signage, right? Please do not walk onto private land when you're doing these. Stay in the public right of way. And if you can, wear something that's high visibility, a safety vest, any sort of bright color, just so your safety is a little bit higher on the roadside. Okay, and then I have a couple of housekeeping things. So sanitizing your equipment. If you are conducting multiple surveys in a day, I suggest getting a spray bottle and using a diluted bleach solution that's roughly 1 part bleach, 5 parts water. So you can spray your net out, air dry it before you go to your next site, and bring enough vials that you can have clean vials at each site. If you're only doing one survey in a day, it makes it really easy. You can bring your stuff home, wash them with some warm soapy water. If your vials are of a higher quality, you can probably put them in the dishwasher and just run them through that cycle. You can use alcohol. Just try not to use anything that has any synthetic dyes in it. And the reason we're doing this is because we don't want to spread any pathogens or parasites or bacteria between locations to the bumblebees, right? If we're trying to conserve them, we don't want to harm them by getting them sick as we're doing these surveys. A few things about field safety and just general field etiquette. It's a lot safer if you can survey with somebody or in a group of people, just in case, if somebody gets hurt or if a tire blows, it's better to be with somebody than be alone. It's a good idea to bring a little first aid kit with you. Prepare for spotty cell phone service, have your maps downloaded to your device or have paper maps with you. Always bring more water than you think you're going to need. Dress appropriately, right, for plants, stinging insects. There are some plants that have some poisons that can get on you. Sun protection and footwear, right? If you're going to be walking through some rugged terrain, make sure you've got the appropriate footwear on. We know that the weather can shift pretty quickly in the plains, so make sure that you're monitoring the weather conditions throughout the day. If some inclement weather does roll in, it's okay to stop your survey and just end it there. Your safety is definitely the highest priority here, so if you're ever feeling unsafe or unsure about anything, please stop your survey and just get out of the area. Make sure to clean off your boots before and after you leave a survey location, just to make sure you're not transferring any invasive plants to a new area. Don't pick any flowers or other plants, right? These belong to the landscape. And then be polite to the curious. If you're out swinging a net, especially in a place like a state park or somewhere that has a lot of foot traffic, people are going to ask you what you're doing. So just be nice to them, let them know what they're doing, invite them to join the project. You can send them to me, whatever you need to do. But if you're swinging a net, people will come up to you. And then just a little information about bee stings. So again, the way that we have our protocol set up, bumblebee stings are very, very unlikely to occur. So oftentimes bee stings happen when you stumble upon a nest and they're trying to defend their nest. But stumbling upon a bumblebee nest is like finding a needle in the haystack, right? It just doesn't happen. If I ever do it, I'll go buy a lottery ticket. Um, so when we're catching bees, they're out foraging, right? They've got a job to do. They're trying to collect food and get back to their nest. So they're really not bothered with what we're doing. They're not paying attention to us. As you catch them in the net, you will hear them, right? They're going to be aggravated, but by transferring them into the vial and not touching the bee, we're really unlikely to get stung. But please know what to do in the event that you or someone else in your party gets stung, just because there can be a serious allergic reaction in some people. If they've never been stung before and this happens to be their first one, you want to know what to do in case they have a systemic reaction. So with mild bee stings, if you've never been stung before, there's going to be some localized swelling right where the bee got you. With bumblebees, the stinger will not stay in you. So they actually have the ability to sting multiple times. And so they're going to walk away with their stinger. So there won't be a stinger if it was a bumblebee. There will be a red welt that swells. And within an hour or maybe the next day, it might start to itch like a mosquito bite. So if you get stung and that's sort of your reaction, you can put an ice pack on it, an ice cube on it. You can take an antihistamine to help that swelling and itchiness go down. If, however, you start to get some swelling that is away from the sting site, so maybe you got stung in your arm, but your leg or your throat starts to swell, that would be distant swelling. That would be a sign of a systemic reaction. If you start to have trouble breathing or swallowing, any itching or breaking out in hives, nausea, fatigue, stomach cramps. If any of these symptoms start to set in, you need to call 911 immediately. Take Benadryl, and if you or the person has an EpiPen, it would be time to administer that. So know who you're going out surveying with. If they do have an EpiPen, know where it is. Ask if it's okay for you to administer it should they get stung, right? Just to cover yourself legally. But again, this has not happened. We just like to let everybody know what to do should it happen. Okay, so now we're going to move into how to submit data, and I'll go through this part kind of quick because it's online, it's pretty self-explanatory, and it links up directly to the data sheet that you're going to fill out. So again, we're going to go to bumblebeewatch.org. So I'm going to pull up that website here. Okay, so here's Bumblebee Watch. You can click add sighting from this button here, or you can click it from up here. And there's going to be two options. You're going to select Bumblebee Atlas. If you conducted a survey, this is where we want you submitting your data. If you just want to share photos of bumblebees that you see in your yard or at your friend's house or outside your work, you can also share those. You can do that by submitting through Bumblebee Watch, which is more incidental, right? Happenstance observations. For these incidental observations, it's still great data. All it's going to ask you for is a photo, a date, a location, and a floral host if you have one. When we go to Bumblebee Atlas, it's going to select you for all of your survey data. So you can either choose from your past locations. If you've done a survey at this spot before, it'll have a drop-down list of all your survey locations, or you can click add a new location. And there's a few ways to do this, right? If you're very confident that you know the latitude and longitude, you can certainly type those in, or you can click select map. And then we can you can either use the search bar here to type in a location. So let's say I was in Wichita, right? Then you can sort of zoom in to find where you were. You can change this to satellite. You can zoom in. Say I did my survey right here. So wherever you click on the map, you click set location, and those coordinates will be entered in automatically for you. Now I'm going to say this was my Test location, but you can name this whatever you want, and whatever this name is will then pop up in your previous locations for the next time. So I'm going to hit proceed. And then all of these categories here align with your data sheet. So the accuracy, I'm going to put 0 to 25 because I zoomed in to exactly where my survey location was, right? So this is, think about it as how accurate is your actual location. If I knew exactly where I was, I'm going to put 0 to 25. If I don't quite remember, but it was in this area, you're just going to choose a higher number for that. You're going to enter in the date of your sighting. I'm going to put January 1, so I remember this is a test. You're going to select your survey type, collection method. So the main one that we want you using is capture, or at least tried to capture all the observed bumblebees. Excuse me. This means you collected or tried to collect all the bumblebees that you saw. For this next one, captured bees that only looked different, this is for the times when you roll up to a site and maybe it's a whole field filled with bee balm and there are so many bees flying around that you simply cannot catch them all. So you're going to do your best to try and catch bees that look different from each other. And this introduces bias, but it's the best we can do. So we're just going to record it that that's the way we conducted our survey. This combination of captured all and captured different is maybe when you started out doing your survey, you were capturing everything that you saw. You got halfway through and realized, man, there's too many bees here. I can't capture all of these. I'm just going to catch the ones that look different. So that's when you would select this. And then photo only doesn't apply to Kansas. This is more for Minnesota, Iowa participants where they're surveying in areas where there are federally endangered species, right? It's illegal for them to capture and handle bumblebees unless they have a permit. So they're only taking photos of bumblebees on flowers, which provides not as high quality data. So we don't want you doing this. Preferably, we want you to catch and observe every single bee that you saw. The size of your survey area should be 1 hectare. If you have to adjust that, you can. Number of surveyors. Oops, gotta fill these out. You can enter in your start time and your stop time. So this is going to be your start and your stop time, right? The length of your active search minutes will be 45. But if you caught a lot of bees, you might have surveyed for an hour and a half. So you're going to enter in whatever your times are, your weather information, how cloudy it was, what the winds were, if there are any weather notes, maybe it was smoky out, maybe it was hazy out. You can write that in there. The type of habitat you were in. I'm going to say I was in a grassland, but next to me there was a crop field, and that's really all I saw. So I'm not going to fill out the rest of these optional secondary habitat types. For blooming plants, I'm going to say 30% of my area was in bloom. I saw some bunch grasses. I saw some bare soil. I saw some rodent holes. And again, those are items that we associate with bumblebee nesting. For management practices, you can go through and select yes, no, or suspect for each of these. Some of these, right, native grazing, maybe you don't see any actual animals, but you see hoof prints or you see piles of scat. You can add that as yes, that there was evidence. Insecticide use is a hard one for a lot of people, myself included, unless there are posted signs saying, hey, this area was sprayed recently, or or you're in an area where there was insecticide sprayed. It's really hard to tell. So you can put yes, no, or suspect. Sometimes if it's a bad one, you can smell it in the air. Herbicide use also can be hard unless there was a sign. If you see a specific type of plant, like a thistle that has some discoloration, it's looking a little yellow, or maybe there's a patch of dead plants, but nothing else around it looks the same, they're all alive and healthy, you might suspect that somebody probably sprayed those. If you're sure of it and you can recognize the signs of herbicide, you can put yes. Fire, you want to know if there's evidence of fire on your survey day, right? I don't want to know, maybe this is your property and you know you burned 2 years ago. I don't want you to put yes. I want you to put what it looks like on the day. So if you're walking through the area and you're getting some ash on the bottom of your pants or your shoes, you might put yes, there was a fire here recently. In the management notes, if if you want to put more about the area that you're surveying because you know the area history, you're more than welcome to do that. Flowering species. So the number that you put in, the website will auto populate a number for you to enter. And our plant database here is connected back to iNaturalist. So as you start typing in a plant name, it's going to pull from iNaturalist and it's going to say, oh, did you mean this plant? And I'm going to say, yes, thank you. I did mean wild bergamot. If you don't know the plant, or you know it was a sunflower, but I don't know which kind of sunflower, you can scroll through these and pick one that is not a species, right? If you're not sure which species it was, don't pick one. Pick a category that is a little bit more broad and encompasses multiple species. You can click this info button and it will take you to iNaturalist and give you more information about that plant. But for now, I'm going to click the genus. I'm like, I know it was a sunflower, but I don't know which species. Then if it was a volunteer effort, you click this button and you enter in, again, your survey time, planning time, drive time, whether or not you used online resources to train for this that were independent of this live training. If you collected bees or not. So unfortunately, there will be times when people go out to survey and they don't observe a single bumblebee during their whole 45 minutes. If you click no here, that tells the website that please submit this data afterwards. We don't have any photos to share. If we click yes, it's going to bring us to the next step where we submit our photos. So you type your name, hit proceed. If you missed anything or you didn't fill in a category, it will say error and bring you back to the spot that you need to fill in. So now we're at the point where we can enter our bumblebee photos. So we're going to click add sighting. And then you're going to click select photos. And here I've got some Kansas bees pulled up. And I'm going to select one of the face, side, overview, some different angles. And at this point in the process, you'll have already gone through and organized the photos and you know which ones you want to submit for each bee. So your photos are going to upload. You can click on them to review them. We have this field guide that you can use to click through the different color patterns of your bee. And as you do that, it will narrow down the species that you might have. So I'm going to click Pennsylvanicus, the American bumblebee, but you also don't have to do that, right? Some people will also click this AI identification button, and I am an AI hater, but I need to preface this with this is not live AI, so it's actually a model that is not running from a giant AI data center. It's a model that was trained using all of our Bumblebee Watch observations. And so it's making a best guess using the photos that you submitted to identify the species that it is. And it'll tell you like, I'm 90% confident that it's this species. So you can use that. No, it's not actively pulling from AI. It's a model that's just running on the website now. Or you can leave it as Bumblebee. If you don't want to take a guess, if you don't know, you can leave it as Bumblebee. Every single submission that is put through Bumblebee Watch is verified by myself or another person on our team. If you also upload your images to iNaturalist, you can link that ID number here, or if you, some people link this back to like their camera settings. So maybe they're trying to check their identifications and how well they're doing. They'll leave little notes in here to go back and reference it for themselves. So this reference ID is only for you. You don't have to fill it out. Again, the sex, you can take a guess here, or you can leave it as not determined, and I will go through and add that sex. The floral host, again, is connected to iNaturalist, so you can go through, find your species, you can add any notes, add any observation notes about the bee, like, oh, this one was acting a little weird, this one I caught in the air, there's no floral host. If you are surveying on private land, we want you to check this private box. And for those of you that are surveying on private land, we're going to launch a different process where it'll ask you earlier in this submission process, did you survey on private land, yes or no? And for all surveys that are conducted on private land, we're going to obscure those so nobody that logs on to Bumblebee Watch can view those. Otherwise, all of your observations are going to be public, which is the way that we like it and prefer it. But in Kansas, any surveys on private land, we're going to have obscured. So then we're going to click Save Sighting. And there we go. So it has all the information we entered. It has the status here. And this status, as I or another person on the team go through and verify these, this status will change to in review, or it will change to verified, or it will change to not a bumblebee. You can add more sightings if you have more bumblebees. You just keep going through that process. Okay, let me get back to the training here. Okay, so a couple best practices. Try and enter your data as close to the collection date as possible. Just in the case that you forget to write something down on your data sheet and you're entering it online, you're like, oh man, I can't remember what that was. It's a lot easier to recall information the closer you were to your survey date. Keep good records of which bees go with which photos so that you can enter in your data accurately, and then only include the most useful photos, right? So if you took 6 photos, but 2 of them are blurry, just submit 4. I don't need to see the blurry ones. I won't use them. So there's how to submit data. And I think now we'll take a little bit of a break. And when we come back, we'll spend the rest of the time learning how to identify and photograph Kansas bumblebees. So let's take a 5-minute break here. And I'll start to make some noise on the screen when it's time to get rolling. All right, so this next part, we're going to talk about the identification process as a whole, and then how to differentiate bumblebees from flies, bumblebees from wasps, bumblebees from other bees, go through male and female bumblebees, and then look at some ID features. So this is the process kind of laid out. The first thing we have to do when we're going out, and maybe this is your first survey you've ever done and you're trying to catch bumblebees, your eyes are going to follow any sort of insect that is flying on a flower. So being able to tell them apart is a key piece of this if you want to identify them. And flies can look a lot like bees. So on this screen here, there's only one bee and the rest are flies. So I'm going to give you a second to take a look at these and try and guess which one you think is a bumblebee. If you guess number 6, you are correct. But what this is trying to show here is that it is it's quite difficult to jump into identification, especially if you have some of these hairier robber flies or syrphid flies or flower flies that mimic bumblebees. So the way you can tell bees and flies apart is that bees will have four wings. While they're in flight, the wings are joined, so it can look like two, but when you have it chilled up close, you'll see that bees have four wings, whereas flies will only have two. Bees are going to carry a large pollen load on their hind leg. Again, if you watch the ecology webinar, we go into that and talk about the value of this hind leg and the ability to carry mass amounts of pollen. Flies, on the other hand, are not equipped to intentionally transport large amounts of pollen. So they might have some pollen grains on their body, but definitely won't have a big glob of pollen. Bumblebees to the naked eye are usually hairy looking, whereas flies are not. Flies can be very hairy, as we saw in some of the past photos, but oftentimes their hairs are so small that our naked eyes don't pick them up. Bumblebees have long elbowed antennae. Flies usually have short stubby antennae. And then you can look at the eye position. So bee eyes will be on the side of the head, whereas flies are more like stereotypical insects, right? The big bulgy eyes that sort of take up most of the head. Their eyes meet in the center of the head and touch, whereas bees do not. They're going to be on the side of the head. Wasps, they're pretty easy to differentiate, again, but your first survey or two, you might look at them and be like, oh, let me catch you. Visually, they are very different looking from bumblebees. A lot of the colors that you see on wasps are not due to hair color, but rather the color on their exoskeleton or the skin of the wasp. They won't be carrying large amounts of pollen. Again, not very hairy to our naked eyes, and they usually hold their wings quite differently than bees. So we know we have a bee at this point, right? We don't have a fly, we don't have a wasp. Our next step is to figure out if it's a bumblebee or a different kind of bee. So the first one that some people confuse honeybees with, or confuse bumblebees with, is honeybees. And this is in the beginning. A lot of people can weed this one out pretty quickly. Honeybees are a little bit smaller than bumblebees, though not always true. They are black and orange in color. Their abdomen is more of a torpedo shape. If your camera is good enough, you'll also see that honeybees have hairy eyes. Carpenter bees do get confused with bumblebees quite a bit, so I have some side-by-side images here. Carpenter bees do not have as hairy of an abdomen as bumblebees, so they look shinier. The hind leg is also very different. So bumblebees have a pollen basket or a zone that sort of doesn't have any hair in it, whereas carpenter bees have more of a bottle brush-like area, so we call that scopy. So check out the abdomen and the hind leg if you're unsure. Digger and longhorn bees can also look like bumblebees, and these bees typically have a protuberance on their head, kind of looks like they have a nose, if you will, whereas bumblebees' face will have, it'll just be flat. There's not going to be an extra bump there. And digger and longhorn bees, if they're females, are also going to have those bottle brush, very hairy, very dense, packed hairs on their hind leg. And it's okay if you submit one of these. There's a button for us to click, this isn't a bumblebee. And if I know what it is, I'll let you know what it is. So now you know you've got a bumblebee. The next piece is figuring out if it's male or a female, just because identification between males and females looks a little bit different. So the key characteristics when separating out males and females, again, if this is too much for you and you're like, I don't want to do this, you don't have to worry about sexing your bees. Females are the only ones that are going to have a pollen basket, if it's not a cuckoo bumblebee, that is. Males do not collect and transport pollen, so they don't have that hairless zone on their hind leg. For the abdomen, female bumblebees have 6 segments and males have 7. So if you catch a bumblebee that has a little bit longer, narrower abdomen, you probably have a male, right? I'm not asking you to count how many segments, excuse me, are on the bee, but visually, if you catch one and you're like, wow, that's really long, it's probably a male. Same thing with antennae. Males have an extra antennal segment, and in some of the species, their segments are even elongated. So I have an American bumblebee in the images here, where you can see side by side, the male has much longer antennae. Again, this one is not an easy feature if you're just starting out to assess, but if you can look at them side by side, it's usually pretty easy to tell. Females are the only ones that have a stinger. Males do not. So if you see a stinger right away, you know you have a female bumblebee. In some species, the males will have enlarged eyes. So in Kansas, we have the black and gold bumblebee and the brown belted bumblebee. And both of the males of those species have enlarged eyes, where they just look a little bit more bulbous, taking up more space on the head. And then this one is definitely not the easiest feature to see, but the more bumblebees you look at, males always tend to have longer hairs, more yellow hairs all over the body, and it just gives them this shaggier appearance, right? They don't look as well groomed or as well kept as their female counterparts. So now we know we've got a female. The next part is to figure out if it's a cuckoo or not. And in Kansas, this doesn't super apply. Cuckoo bumblebees have not been observed in the state in probably over 20 years. So if you find one, great, you'll make history. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through this process pretty quick in case somebody travels somewhere else, because cuckoo bees are still quite abundant, even in the Black Hills if you go out west. And they just look a little bit different. So they don't have as much hair on the abdomen, right? There, you can see the exoskeleton. You can see the skin of that bee in the photo on the left, right? It's not obstructed by hairs or anything. So if you get a bee that looks like that, it's probably a cuckoo. They also have a much more curved and tapered abdomen, right? These bees essentially need to usurp the nest of an existing queen. So they're gonna try and kill her. And so their body is sort of made with extra armor, right? They're able to sort of flip around and use the abdomen and the stinger to sort of kill the queen. Same thing with their head. They've got a much thicker head, right? And we can think of this as armor. And if you look at the difference in size between the red lines, you can see that the cuckoo bee has a much larger head than the regular bumblebees. So once you know you've got a true bumblebee, you can pull up your ID sheet, which we have these online and in the handbook that kind of shows the range. So we're going to talk about the identification of the 6 regularly encountered bees. And when we go through identification, we split this into 3 parts. So we have the hair color on the front of the face, which we call the fronds. Let me get out my laser pointer here. So this area is the fronds. Then we have the vertex, which some people call the eyebrows of the bumblebee. You're looking at the hair colors on these parts of the body. And then for myself and other experts, and if you really want to dive into ID, we pay attention to the cheek length or the malar space, which is the area between the bottom of the eye and where the mandible hinge is. So this top photo is a Southern Plains bumblebee, which is in Kansas and has a very, very short cheek, versus this is the American bumblebee here, maybe a yellow bumblebee that has a very long cheek. So again, that's not something you have to look at, but when you take bumblebee photos, we ask you to get a nice photo of the face so that we can assess both the hair color and the cheek length. Then we look at the thorax. And for this, we're breaking the thorax into 3 parts, which you can see in the photo there. And we're going to be looking at hair color and pattern in those 3 parts. And then lastly is the abdomen. So again, the females have 6 segments, and those are called tergites. So we split those into tergite 1 or T1 down to tergite 6 or T6. And again, we're looking at the color of the hair and the color pattern on each of those segments. So here's the segments on a real photo. It's easier to see the end of a segment. So where this yellow ends is the end of segment 1. And then you can kind of see the breaks in the hairs. Those are the ends of the other segments. So we're going to go through the 6 species here in Kansas. And for each of these slides, I'm going to have the identification features for the head, thorax, and abdomen. Anything that is highlighted is a really good feature to pay attention to in the state of Kansas, right? So if we go out to Washington, there are going to be other bees where this T2 through T6 black applies. So the highlighted ones are just for good ID features in Kansas. And then we also have a regional range map of bumblebee atlas data. So anywhere that somebody has surveyed and found this bee or submitted an incidental observation of this bee is going to pop up on this map. Because Kansas is one of the newer projects with less data, there are less data points. So just because the bee doesn't pop up in Western Kansas doesn't necessarily mean that it's not there. It's just that somebody hasn't recorded it there yet. So the common eastern bumblebee, or Bombus impatiens, the front of the face has black hairs, the top has yellow hairs, the thorax is yellow, and then the pattern is a black circle or a teardrop in the center. And this isn't always obvious because the black and yellow hairs mix together, but sometimes it is very obvious. The main thing that I look for this species is that there is no color besides black on tergite 2 through tergite 6. So you can see over here, the abdomen is mostly black on this bee. Then we have the 2-spotted bumblebee, Bombus bimaculatus. The vertex, the top of the head colors are yellow on this bee, so right in this area. And the key feature for this one is that it has a yellow W. So if you see here, this is a really nice picture. The second abdominal segment here, T2, has a nice yellow W on it. Sometimes this W is small. Sometimes it's really obvious, like this one. We have the brown-belted bumblebee, or Bombus griseoculus. This one has a brown or yellow crescent on it, which gives it its name of the brown-belted. You can see in this photo here, there's a faint stripe of brown that looks like a half moon. I've also heard some people call this a fanny pack. Sometimes it can be yellow and it looks like the 2-spotted bumblebee. And the way to tell those apart are by the hair colors on the top of the head. So sometimes we take into account, oh, it has this pattern on the abdomen and this pattern on the head, which makes it this species. This is a pretty abundant bumblebee species, found almost throughout the entire US, pretty common. Southern Plains bumblebee, or Bombus fraternus. This is a species of conservation concern, meaning we know it's in decline. It has been petitioned for federal protection. This one has a very, very short cheek, like I showed in the photo. And this one has a really obvious black stripe between the wings. So you can see here, this black stripe is always very nice and neat on this bee, right? There's no mixing of hairs there. You can clearly see where the lines are. And then the hairs on the abdomen of this bee, so right here, lay sort of oppressed to the abdomen. They lay very, very flat, almost as if somebody took some grease and combed through it. So if you see that on a bee, you have the Southern Plains bumblebee. Then we have the American bumblebee. This is another species of conservation concern, was also petitioned for federal protection. is still being reviewed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on whether or not it will be granted that protection. The main character that I look for on this one is the first abdominal segment. It's half black and half yellow. So you can see in the photo here, if we think T1 starts here and ends where we see this split, the first half is black and the second half is yellow. That's the American bumblebee. And then we have the black and gold bumblebee, which looks very similar to the American bumblebee. The way to tell those two apart is by the hair color on the top of the head. So right here, this little patch, that is the vertex. That's the top of the head. That's the eyebrows of the bee, if you will. Those are yellow on the black and gold. You can think of it as wearing a gold crown, whereas the American bumblebee will have black hairs in this section. So here's two side-by-sides of the hairs from the top of the head. You can see black and gold has yellow hairs right here, these little tufts, and the American bumblebee has black tufts. And then same thing when we lay out that first abdominal segment, we can see that the American has the top half is black hairs, the lower half is yellow hairs. The black and gold bumblebee is usually black. Sometimes it can have yellow hairs sort of on the sides here. And so when we're photographing bumblebees, we want to make sure that we're taking photographs from angles that allow us to see all those different features, right? If we can't identify the bee and you spent all this time doing your survey and taking your photos and organizing your photos to get back to have us not be able to verify your species, it really is a huge loss of data, and we don't want that to happen if you're going to contribute so much time and effort. So the first angle is to take a picture of the bee's face so that we can see those hair colors on the head, as well as look at the cheek length. And I find that flipping the bee on their back is a really great way to get the cheek photo, right? Because when we photograph them with their legs down, sometimes their head is tucked in as if you were tucking your chin. And it's pretty difficult to see the cheek length. So the first angle is of the head. The second one is more of a dorsal or a top-down view, so we can see the patterns on the thorax as well as the abdomen. You want to make sure to open the wings for this so that the first two segments are not obscured by the wings. I like to do this early on when you take the bee out of the cooler, because you don't want to be opening the wings as the bee is starting to wake up. That is also a time when you could get stung. So do this part early on. The wings are very, very rigid. It's okay to touch them with your fingers. They're not made of scales like butterflies. Some people will use the tip of a pencil for this, or tweezers. I've seen some people go out with toothpicks or dental tools to open up the wings. So however you want to do it. And then the third angle is that side profile, right? This allows us to look at the hind leg to apply a sex to the bee or to determine if it's a cuckoo bee. It also lets us view the abdomen and the thorax and the head from a different angle, right? Sometimes colors on bees can be obstructed by the light. So from one angle, the hairs might look yellow. From a different angle, they might look black or orange. So having multiple angles of the bee is helpful. And then just a few tips. Make sure to check the focal length. Sometimes cameras will try and pick up on the tip of the wing rather than the bee. It would suck to get home and see that all of your photos are blurry because your camera did this. Make sure you check the lighting. If it's too dark or if it's too light, we want to make sure that we can identify that bee properly. Again, here, taking a photo of the bee's face while it's on her back, you can see that it's much easier to see the hair color on the face and the cheek length while she's on her back than on her stomach, if you will. Please don't submit photos of bees in vials. The plastic usually obscures any sort of features that we can identify. It's very hard to assign an identification to bees that are photographed in vials. Make sure you are checking your vials. Sometimes, when they're exposed to heat and cold and heat and cold and heat and cold, they can crack. And when they crack, your bees can get wet. Wet bees are very hard to identify. If this does happen, you can take an edge of your shirt and sort of dry them off. But do keep an eye on your vials because we want to avoid this happening if possible. And then that scale sheet, right? If you can take a picture of a bumblebee on a scale sheet or next to a ruler, that really helps us. Okay, and we've made it to the end, everybody. Thank you for sitting through us on your Saturday morning. I know it's going to be a nice day here. Hopefully, it will be down there too. We will have registration for our in-person training events coming up. So if you want to join us for one of those, certainly keep an eye out. And as a reminder, Xerces is a member-based organization. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, please consider becoming a member of the Xerces Society or making a one-time donation. We've got a pretty cool gift center where you can pick up a hat or a tote bag or one of our cool books or our garden signs. And thank you to everybody who is a member already. We really appreciate you supporting us and allowing us to continue the work that we're doing. And with that, I will leave you with our two websites. So xerces.org, and then we've got bumblebeeatlas.org. You can also find us at all the social media platforms using those handles. So with that, I think we can open up the questions and see if there's any more. It looks like we've only got
one question from Cynthia.
Okay.
I thought that would be better to answer verbally than in the chat or the question.
Yeah. So Cynthia's question was, can you adopt more than one grid cell? And the answer to that is yes, you can adopt as many grid cells as you want. We ask that you conduct at least 2 surveys per grid cell that you adopt. So if you adopt more than one, just know that you're signing up to conduct more than 2 surveys each summer. All right, so if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you again so much for joining us this morning. If you have further questions, you can email me or Deidre. We'll be sending out a link when this recording is ready. And
looks like we have a question from Sarah. What would you classify pasture land as?
Well, I would classify that as ag, but I know that there are others that classify it as grassland because they didn't recognize it as pasture. So if you know it's a pasture, classify it as ag. When we do analyses with management, we'll also overlay layers that sort of have the land already classified too. So we'll double check what the land actually is versus what people are classifying it as. And pastures, in my opinion, have been some of the greatest survey spots. Pastures and hay meadows have been really good places for bumblebees. Nice. Yeah, that sounds like it might be a good place to survey, especially if your spring is running on it. If there is an area with water, you're likely to find some more flowering plants near that, native or non-native. And if there are plants, there are going to be bumblebees. I have not seen too many bumblebees on yucca. That doesn't mean they won't use them, but I personally haven't seen them on yucca plants. Sometimes carpenter bees will use the actual stalks, like the woody stalks, to nest in.
Yeah, I also haven't seen them use yucca plants. In the western part of the state, I've observed them a lot on sunflower species. They really like those, especially in that fall time frame, from my observations.
Yeah. Or Rocky Mountain bee plant. I don't know if it has a different name, that weedy purple one.
Yeah.
Really good.
if you find a patch of that Rocky Mountain bee plant, it is just buzzing with pollinators
Yeah,
of all sorts.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you've got thistle in there and cactus, they will be there.
As far as getting permission for state land manager or from state land managers, I definitely recommend that you do that. That way, if curious or concerned people call you in to that manager or the park ranger, they will be aware of what you're doing and can explain to whoever called in or if they see you. It's just a safety aspect, and then also just make sure that you have all your bases covered.
And I think I put that information in the email as well of where to find the appropriate land manager. And
Yes,
most of them should know about this project, so it's not like you're calling out of the blue.
yes. And if you ever have questions on who to call, um, say you just cannot find that information online or something of the manager's phone number, you can always call our office here in Pratt at 620-672-5911, and someone here can direct you to the proper manager and give you their contact information.
Okay, well, I think we can wrap up for the day. Thanks again for you guys for sticking around.
Yes, thank you, everyone.